guests, those of you here who received us in your studios, in your homes, because we find that you are working in unconventional ways. And this is more so how we also operate. Perhaps that's why we find our mutual interests in working together. So, yeah, to the artists, to the researchers, to those of you who opened your doors to us, some even till 2 a.m. Those of you who kept us, engaged until 12, midnight, 2 a.m., we are sorry for disturbing your peace, but also it's necessary for our mutual growth. For us, the concentration on the African continent has become a matter of necessity. Because a lot of our production and our thought and our exhibitions and so on tend to, be more visible elsewhere outside of our local context. So through, Nantume and Wamala, Zitoni, who also have come to Ghana, spent between 3 and 6 months. It's been a process of deep learning for the past year since we began our exchange program. And it's more so like a hybrid. Like you come into a university, you are taking lectures and boring classes. Even studios, we are quite challenged. One thing I noticed is our shared histories, how similar our history of art education evolved through the, missionary apparatuses as well as the colonial interventions. All of these have shaped how we think about art and how we make what we do. And there are certain defaults that they have deposited in our consciousnesses. And yeah, we felt in this century, at least, we are natives of the 21st century, and we ought to begin to inaugurate new processes, new means of production, and new ideologies by which we do what we do. So this is basically the undercurrent for our visit here. The intention is to give you a background of blaxTARLINE's projects, because we don't take it for granted that everybody here knows it. Even we who are part of it, we are constantly, refreshing and nudging ourselves and trying to come to terms with what we are doing. So we'll give you a background into that, so we have the general context. Then after that, our individual practices will come through. We'll stick to time. You can keep time, please, so that we proceed. Yes, so we go. One of our slogans is African unity by other means. And the exchange program that you heard about is more so steps in that direction. We are very much in touch with our allies, our collaborators and networks from all over the world. And we spread ourselves in that context. But blaxTARLINES is more so, it's many things. It's a coalition of artists, non-artists. We think of it as a hyper network that is not, it's not necessarily fixed in any one location. It's based on solidarity. The way we operate is more so based on the model of solidarity and an understanding of art not as, not as a means towards commercial ends, but as a disposition, an attitude to the world, an attitude to politics, and an attitude to life. So we exist also as a contemporary art incubator, and this is where you find us at the Department of Painting and Sculpture. We have a project space there. We invite all of you. We describe ourselves as a sharing community because part of the politics of what animates what we do is the understanding, when we are collectivizing, the real essence is to share in a way that, does not always come back in terms of reward. So it's like exhausting oneself, burning oneself like fuel, for the cars or for the engines to move from one point to the next. Something needs to drive it, or something needs to burn for it to have life. And so this is also part of why we describe ourselves as an art labor movement, because in a capitalist world, everything thrives on labor. Capitalism attempts to encroach it and to exploit it. For us, what we want to do is to liberate it, such that our work can exist coextensively without competition. And equality is our starting point. It's not a destination, as in other liberal ideas of relating to each other. For us, it's preemptive in the sense that by the time we are beginning our conversations, we are not observing. If there are any hierarchies, they dissolve as the relationship grows. And we attempt to achieve a collective form of becoming. This is what also spurs us on, such that it's never a fixed form that we espouse. We're always evolving and adapting to the conditions out of which our work emerges. So the commons, be they public or in nature of culture, the idea is that there are things that ought to be commodified, and there are things that ought not to be commodified, things that we can generally share. And art, for us, is one of the things that is universal property. It has its particular determinations, but once it emerges, it also has consequences for all of us. So how do we toggle between this is a question we stride with. Since the 1990s, we've been engaging in radical, subversive practices in art, in Kumasi, in Accra, and elsewhere. blaxTARLINES is also, we can say that at least in the art school in the first art school in Ghana, which is the KNUST where we have all come from, we've done a lot of work to how do you say, to deal with the unconscious of what we have inherited, like I said, through the missionary and the colonial art educational training system. So this is the first phase, and we're also transcultural, transgenerational. We are interested in the soft and hard infrastructure. The intellectual, the material are all key aspects of how we think. What we do is based on, because generally we are mostly operating from conditions of lack. State, does not support us in many ways. Private patronage is low, and so on. Artists have to find ways, and sometimes, how we do this, you can't be prescriptive. Each context will have to create its own form of going against its problematics. But for us, our projects, we also, in the spirit of equality, we expand it beyond the human-human relations, such that we are also considering, excesses such as the transhuman, inhuman, post-human consequences of our interventions. blaxTARLINES is, it's like we piggyback off the Department of Painting and Sculpture. And so, on the one hand, it's an autonomous thing. On the other hand, it is embedded in the Department of Painting and Sculpture for strategic reasons, because this university is the first public, degree awarding institution in Ghana. It's among the first in West Africa, and we also, our politics is not to abolish the institution entirely. It's more so to maybe hack it. So this is how we've been operating. This is our main entrance to the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. You may have seen it. And we come, so we'll go through the department and its history. You find that, especially with Makerere, it might be just a decade, apart, but we are very much closely connected. So our department is among the pioneering art departments in Africa. It was founded in 1927 as part of the first formal education institution established in the Gold Coast. This is the colonial predecessor of Ghana. It was called the Prince of Wales College. It later became Achimota School. And then in 1937, the department developed into the School of Arts and Crafts. After this, the Arts and Crafts School moved in 1951 into the current site that we have it in Kumasi. So it became the nucleus of what was called the Kumasi College of Technology, which is today the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. Then in 1960, the School of Arts and Crafts becomes an autonomous college. In 1961, the name is changed to Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. So Ghana achieved our independence in 1957, and then we become a republic in 1960. So it's after this that art tutelage and art education, our Ghanaian intellectuals begin to take the fold. Prior to this, it was, colonial art masters coming in and training us. So to my left is the blaxTARLINES project space. Those who know. The late nights, the long days. Please, let me not bring back memories. But yeah, this is our project space. It looks very unassuming. And then it's embedded in the department. So, as mentioned, we are very much mindful of the global entanglements, within which our practices are situated. So we do not think only of our unique geographical context. We are very much mindful. And so we're building institutional relations, interpersonal, communal, and so on. All of these relations across Asia, Africa, North America, Europe, and so on. So just a few institutions. Is that a party going on? Okay. So if you in the northern part of Ghana, our colleague Ibrahim Mahama has established 3 institutions, which for him intervening also in the physical infrastructure of how art is created and distributed. So these are Nkrumah, Volene, SCCA Tamale, and Red Clay, which operates as a studio. So we program events and everything, So in Tamale, Kumasi, we have here's our museum on campus. There are also institutions in Nigeria, Germany, Estonia, and so on, through which we program exchange programs. and artists in residence. It is in that line that Vodo. It's very difficult to not be distracted. Huh? But yeah, so our partnerships with Vodo and Underground, CATPC in Congo. So we're very much intentional about this. This is a full-on list. This is our co-founders of blaxTARLINES. They are from left, Caricature Seydou, who is our current Dean of Faculty at the College of Art. He's been here before. Then there is Professor Edwin Bojawa, who is our current head of department at the Department of Painting and Sculpture. Then there's George Amperchum, who is a teacher, but a very much, he also plays his role. Then there's Kwekubua Fukisiedu. So these are those who inaugurated this momentum that we have inherited and which we want to carry on, because so blaxTARLINES, at least since Seydou's interventions, have been at least 22 years in the making. So everything we see now, it's taken us this long to build. And we look forward to the next 22 years, and then beyond. So it's a futural thing. So we're not so much, that's why the non-reciprocal gifting is an important idea, such that, we're laboring for generations to come who might, just have it better than we have. So there are two phases of the blaxTARLINES paradigm. The first is the intellectual emancipation phase, which was inaugurated by Professor Caricature Seydou through his art teaching work. And I must add that these are all artists who have at some point given up their studio practices in order to, enter into administrative work, technocratic work, boring things, to open up ways or to open up possibilities for later generations. So, the labor of love is very much tangible for us. Then the economic emancipation phase is where we are now, because we feel, to carry the conceptual depth that we are garnering, we also would need to create the sustaining, elements. So the means by which we produce, we distribute, we share, we think, we learn. So this economic infrastructure is what we are currently doing. So you find a lot of artists just creating their own means by which they work. And we find that attitude here as well, using your garages, as makeshift studios. Some have established ones. Some are even renting studios to work. That's hard, Charlie. So, we're in that phase where we want to think about the art schools, the museums, the galleries, the studios, and so on and so forth, by which we work. So the essence of Seydou's Emancipatory Art Teaching Project, for him, at least, is to reveal and transcend the official, the hidden, and the missing curricula of the painting program. This was a department in which he was teaching. So he started this in 2003, and a lot of experiments have gone into it. Another idea that he offers is a model of art education. But it's not only for art education. It has consequences for criticism, for curating, and so on. So he says that by his observations, the painting program at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology ought to shift from the assignment-given lecturer, assignment-making student model, which is the top-down, master-apprentice, master-learner model, to a guardian lecturer self-conscious student model. So this was to orient the learner towards their independence. It's less inheriting or acquiring a stylistic approach to work. It's more so driving with your destiny in your own hands, but in the art school. So then the teacher would have to respond to what your direction is, rather than you dogmatically having to inherit what the teacher wants you to learn. So it's taken so many directions and experiments. But what led him to do this was more so, he says that by the time of his appointment as a lecturer in 2003, there was hardly any space in Ghana radically dedicated to contemporary art. Neither was there in the art faculty any official commitment to critiqued exhibitions. So he introduced interactive series, a seminar program in Kumasi to host talks, workshops, exhibitions, overviews, critique sessions, and so on. And this was also the strategy he used to embed real-time happenings in the art world into the curriculum. So for two aspects of Seydou's emancipatory art teaching project, filters down into he had to stop making art in the sense of an autonomous genius studio artist, to inaugurate the practice of making artists. So making artists in this context would be just through pedagogy, through thinking, through sharing knowledges and so on. His students acquire an independent disposition to art practice, such that you are not only a commission-based artist, but you have something to say. An art is the means by which you want to do this. So, and when you make artists in this context, you can't claim them to be your property, So then, in that sense, it's a self-generating thing, And then one of his hopes was also to transform art from the status of commodity to the status of gift. And the gift here, he complicates for us, because there are many forms of gifting. The barter is one form of gifting, and so on. But what we mean by this gift is it's a gift that does not require you to be in debt. I give you something, you don't owe me back. You can offer it or you use it. It's really so. So knowledge is really like that. Once I share it, I don't lose it. I have it, you have it, and so on. So for us, these have been the means by which we've been just brooding and testing the limits of the freedoms that come with independent practice. So in the new curriculum that emerges after 2003, you'll find that counter to the medium-specific formalist training that that barrels down since the late 19th century into the mid-20th century, we're able to actually all the way into the first decade of the 21st century. The idea was to demystify this, so artists can start from anywhere. You don't even need to have been to an art school to enter into our program. As long as there's the will and the desire to become an artist, this is where we test. we engage each other, and just through critique we grow. So there's no discipline that we prohibit. You may be interested in animation, robotics, If you want to think through that from your unique angle as an artist, we are always welcoming it. The independent dimension of the practice cannot be overemphasized, so that we're not always conforming to market demands. We're always leading or creating a path that is testing, ideas, testing what we already know. yeah, and then we also touch base with real-time developments in the art world, in the market, in the museum, and in the media systems. We teach curating. It's a studio program, but we've managed to, the hacking we mentioned earlier, we managed to infuse curatorial models and practices. If you want to venture into criticism, if you want to venture into art journalism, and so on, we find ways to just sustain that interest. All of us trained as painters. Well, I trained as a painter. Both. But we are studio artists. But then we also do more because there's more required of us. And artists are trained to curate their own exhibitions, and the peer-to-peer learning model emphasizes what we've been talking about. So these are a few things that underlie. It's a learner-driven program. So once you come in, we follow your direction. And so this might sound like PR, but if it's worth it, it's good, right? So since the 2010s, our department has become very much visible in our region, but also beyond it, and also in the active efforts that we do to go into other contexts to learn. So in 2023, Art Review featured us in was like a survey of institutions offering progressive art education. And, ours was one of them. There were others from South Africa, in Asia, and so on. I'm sure you can find this article. It's actually a book. So for us, the worldview of art that we espouse is not so much. We think of it as embedded in the everyday issues of our world, and so the geopolitical currents, are also just as relevant as our studio experiments. So in thinking about the emancipatory politics of our time, we are still. We think that even though a century ago, Kwame Nkrumah, Nyerere, and co, made inroads and strides to be able to open up new ways of thinking and of being outside of oppressive regimes, this hasn't really gone anywhere. And artists are always implicated in that situation, especially when we participate in the market. So we think about that, and the horizon. And the horizon by which we articulate this is we are inspired by figures like these. Harriet Tubman, a slave who was freeing people. So she gave what she didn't have. And Kwame Nkrumah, Marcus Garvey, Amartya Edu, Bell Hooks, all of these, there are more, but these will give you the temperature of politics that we are working with. And we think of art as something that is radically new. It's not a set form as such. So even though there are known knowns about art, there are also things that are beyond what we know, and it's up to us to, to draw them. So if anything can be said to be art, for us, it must be invented. And each of us has this duty of inventing something that we call art. And it might not always appear in the ways that we are familiar with it. So, in curating, we have a few models that we work with. Accessibility is one of them. Intergenerational conversations, collective curating, regarding the exhibition as a laboratory, the exhibition as a duplex system, as a fractal, multi-directional. So we're thinking across dimensions and horizons in terms of art production, curatorial work, and also the thought that goes into it. So all of these, might sound like too much, but this is how we operate in the art school. So the studio visits that we do, this is always prior to, during the semester, at the end of the sem, each student in our program starts to curate their own exhibition. And we have over 150 students per class. Sometimes it's more, but let me work with a lower number. So we have to do this. So there are at least 150 exhibitions all around the campus. And we have to go around, crate them, discuss, see what artists are thinking, how this could be, how this could grow. Others who have already charted their paths. So these are a few scenes from how we invade space. In Masaka, we did it silently, but in Kumasi, it's been since 2003. So it's just insisting that there are other ways to stage art, to display it, to make or to produce art, and to think around it. And so we've had to work between Accra, Kumasi. All of us have been touched by these processes. It's work, but it's also fun at the same time. This is at SCCA Tamale, where we worked in 2020. We've worked in derelict locomotive sheds in Kumasi, so you get to see where we've been occupying. This is on campus, KNUST. There are even some that stage their own, This is an intervention in a moving taxi. You guys call it taxi here. For us, it's trotro. So this is 15 years ago for a final project in the drawing class. You see, so if we think of drawing, this performative gesture really has no place in the canon of drawing. But if you insist, and if you stretch it long enough, the world will accept it as such. And so it's just, the plastic model. Here they rented the taxi for a period. So for the duration, it's the friends, like the women who were driving and who were also collecting the fares and so on and so forth. So these are exhibitions we had in Accra. We had a trilogy of large-scale shows between 2015 and 2017 in Accra. And this is where we announced to Accra and to the rest of the world what had been happening in Kumasi. So we were very much... our exhibitions become playgrounds, they become curious zones, also learning environments, and so on. Because of the spectrum of artworks that we have on display, responding to this human, inhuman, post-human horizon. So we have more from, this is Jonathan Okoronko occupying this this zone. In 2022, we were invited to participate with Good School at Documenta 15, and we took a collaborative pedagogical project that we've been working on there. And so this is what you have here. There are, Nuna and colleagues have been working around the clock, exhibitions in galleries and other such avenues in Ghana and in London and elsewhere. This is a show I co-curated of Ibrahim's work. So it's in 2023. So it's the experiments we've been doing in Ghana is really, it's no different from when we leave, but it's really the attitude by which we do what we do. And here it was a solo show, but we were able to bring other artists to also realize their own kind of interpretations of the exhibition theme. And then, a year later, Ibrahim realizes this project in London. A year after we worked on the Osnabrück exhibition, he expands the form here at the Barbican in London. And, this is a show I worked on in Italy earlier this year. Actually, I worked on it with Zitoni and Maria. Please give them a round of applause. It was intense. Yeah, it was really cool. But yeah, it was a blaxTARLINES themed exhibition. So we worked with older artists, younger artists. Currently, our ongoing end of year exhibition is what you have here. You see the labor-intensive work we are doing. We really take our destiny into our own hands. And this is also how we train our students in the program to think and work. So this is us doing things for ourselves that we cannot demand others to do for us. And so our end of year exhibitions, we also use them as moments where we workshop the students on professional practice, like the documents such as your bios, your CVs, your portfolios, and we prepare you also for the market. We work with people like Nuna to also deepen the side, because it's very easy to be taken advantage of when you are an undergraduate. It's ripe fodder. We all know this. Yeah. Some of us have been burned hard. So we want to prevent that. So we always try to orient them into the workings of the professional, scene. But it starts, in this modest way, very easy. And just we've been named in the most recent Power 100 list. Ourselves, as well as our key member, Ibrahim. We acknowledge this, but at the same time, we know that there is more work to be done. Everywhere we go, we are seeking to learn and to activate. So there's a publication on our work, which we published in 2001 at the 2021 in the African Arts Journal. If you would like a copy of this, you can see me in chambers. But if you can buy it too, feel free. Thank you very much.
Look like, and how can you, insert that in everyday studio practice?
Yes. I'll approach it like this. For art is a space, through which we think about freedom. Yeah. Freedom is really what is at stake. Okay. So the subversions would have to respond to the conditions of unfreedom that exist. And this is unique everywhere you go. But also, generally, there's a structure of oppression that we can say is universal. So, in that sense, this is where the whole point is to test, or is to realize self-determination. That's why people like Nkrumah and Harriet Tubman are important for us. On the geopolitical level, they've done a lot of work in that sense, but art is, implicated in all of these experiments. So for us, and freedom is a struggle. It's not a destination as such, you see. So, and it's like James Baldwin said, not everybody wants to be free. You see, so this is where the politics comes in. So if it's what you desire, because you would have to be going against the grain, you would have to be going against the status quo, and the status quo will maintain itself by force. and so it's a perilous attempt. It's always everywhere it's risky to assert your, your self-determination, especially in conditions of oppression. So this is how we think about it. Yeah, it's a principle, by which, and it may manifest in your family situation, in the art market that you're participating in a collective you belong, to, and so on. So it's just in the different ways it manifests. How are you consistently insisting on this right to freedom? And it may mean your death. It may very well be that you risk your life to achieve it. But for some, it's worth it. For others, let me go with the flow. So this is why we say that the will is really where it is. So if you're willing to go against the status quo, you have to just be aware of the risks and how you maneuver yourself around it.
Thank you so much. I had another question, but in the interest of time, I will assume you're our next speaker and throw it to you. So the question is simple. Just picking up from where he is, will the art save us in Africa? As a gallerist.
Thank you. That's a really ambitious question.
I know.
Will art save us? What kind of saving are we looking for? One thing that tends to happen is a lot of artists or art institutions, galleries talk about success, right? But we need to understand what success is. Within our own context, we need to be able to appreciate how we are successful. Mostly, or most of the time, so when you say success, then it's related to economic success or financial success and commercial remuneration. So then, everyone is chasing after the money, the cash. But the question is, to what extent, right? And what are some of the compromises you'd have to make? What are some of the sacrifices, or sometimes you have to sell out? We have a very unique, structure, a very unique demographic currently, right, in Africa. And, just by seeing what is happening in the art scene in Uganda, in Kampala, in Masaka, as we've seen, it's really inspiring, right? And artists are doing very interesting things. Innovative, programming structures, which are sustaining them, right? So for me, it's always going into this artist studio is like, wow. I go to this other place, it's like, wow, how are you doing this? Like, wow. And that's exciting. And that's what, for me, success is, right? It's multiple, satellites in different locations. And that's why, again, we are very much, insistent and very much, being consistent with keeping up, some of these, alliances, Underground, Vodo, blaxTARLINES, and also the other, multiple, sites in Africa, right? Not to limit ourselves by geographical, maps and borders and traveling and all these things. So it's also to connect, to understand what that's network, or that expansive network could afford us. So for me, if I've made sense to a certain extent, that's what that would mean to me.
So thank you so much. So the ask for me would be to everybody who's interested in the arts, or who is working in the arts, what is the ask from us? If you take a diagnosis of this continental Africa and all the different challenges that we're going through, what would the ask be from us so we show up time and time again?
You actually said it's to show up. It's to always show up, always show up. And for me, I've also had to really push myself and, stretch myself thin. Samuel is here, and he's first-hand, witness to some of the projects we've done. Subsequently, he's also been a funder of some of the projects we've done, and so it's that love for it, right? It's that genuineness to it. But then again, as artists, we need to show up. We can't be complicit. We can't be, I don't know. That's why also mini collectives are important, right? That become or serve as sites of care, sites of sharing, and helping, right? Helping doesn't necessarily mean you need to give someone cash. Helping could be you just be a listening ear, Helping could be you go to an artist studio, you spend time with them, you spend a whole day with them, you have a food, you drink, you chat about anything and everything. I remember the time Samuel and I we were working on his first solo show, which was the inaugural show of Compound House, and we had we had several meetings and Zoom meetings because he was in Frankfurt at the time. Tracy and I were in Ghana at the time, so we were interacting with him via Zoom. And I remember we've had a lot of meetings prior to that, but then for the very last part of it, which was getting to the exhibition itself, we had a very long Zoom meeting, which was like 8 hours. And then Tracy was like, she's very tired. I'm a nocturnal animal, so I don't mind. So Tracy got off the call, so it was Samuel and I. And the conversation just went into personal, family, growing up. I've known him for probably 10, 15 years, but some of the things he shared with me, I didn't know that. So it took that, getting to be interested in an artist's work, to be able to understand him as a person, his upbringing, where he grew up, how all these things happened. And we're on the Zoom call for probably 20 hours. Tracy woke up in the morning. She texted me to ask for the Zoom link. I told her to just hop on it again. So she came on and we're still here. She was like, you guys shouldn't tell me you've been up. But then that's what it is, right? Being there for each other, just talking. And, because of also the fast-paced world we're in now, it's very easy to dismiss certain claims, right? So there are artists who are, for example, they are curators or gallerists or whatever who are doing studio visits and they're just spending 10 minutes or doing virtual things, right? I mean, it's dependent, but that's what it is, showing up and being present and offering that support, yeah.
Thank you so much. So I will probably lead us into your presentation. And just to hear from how you navigate this step, any practical tips you can share to the artist, because he mentioned earlier about the easy way that young artists can be, taken advantage of. So I'm keen to hear, or rather we are keen to hear how you're changing the landscape, for artists in general as a budding gallerist.
Yeah, it's a good question. When I was preparing my slides, I think that was the last slide I had. So your question would, the last slide would answer that question thoroughly. Pardon me, everyone. I would like to sit to present. No. I even a teacher, so for him, he's used to it. So pardon me if I'm sitting, but I guess my voice is audible and everyone in the back could hear me. So this is Compound House Gallery. Compound House was instituted or started in 2022. The idea was to sort of have an art gallery, right, that would sort of respond to artists' needs. In this presentation, when I'm using the words, they really mean what they mean, right? So words are very important to me and how I use them. The vocabulary is very important. A lot of people tend to throw around words or just use bad words, but when I say something, it really means what it is. So for us, it was also as a way for artists to reclaim agency, right? So now you don't have artists complaining about, I'm working with a gallery that doesn't understand the work I do because maybe they came from the finance or they came from the entertainment industry and now they have a gallery, right? So there might be certain disconnects, especially when you as a gallerist doesn't have an arts, practice background. You wouldn't be able to understand studio practice. You wouldn't be able to understand, artists' living conditions, right? So for me, it was also to set up sort of an alternative, gallery program or gallery structure that would now, the artist will now be in control. So essentially, Compound House is an artist-led and artist-run space. Our gallery profile sort of encapsulates some of these things. Quickly, let me read it, or maybe not read it because most of you have read it. So Compound House Gallery, comes from it originates its name from the Ghanaian compound house structure, right? The compound house is an architectural structure where, families, friends, or even strangers come together to live in a compound where it has multiple units or multiple structures, right? So what happens is maybe you have a young family who just maybe started life and have a kid, starting our life, right? So we need someone to start their life or lay their head and all that. So then you find multiple units. It's like an apartment, the concept of the apartment, but this is just like, one layered. And it's also, out of a certain socioeconomic, need or lack or want that this structure has been able to be sustained. So that's where we take our sort of our ethos from. The idea that the compound house could be a place of sharing, it could be a place where multiple people from diverse disciplines come together to share ideas, to work together, and to live together, right? Sometimes in harmony, sometimes in chaos, but out of it, you still get to live. Whether it's chaos, war, harmony, whatever it is, you still get to live. And for me, these are some of the values I thought or I found very relevant to our conditions as artists living in Ghana or living on the African continent, right? To be able to set up structures that we understand, right? So you're not having a gallery system where rules have been made and now artists are being forced to follow those rules, right? You don't draw up a contract and then you expect the artist to follow it and forcibly get into it. So you need to make something that's friendly to our conditions and our context of where we're coming from. So I simply made the compound house phenomenon, right? It's economies of sharing and resourcefulness, communal governance and social structure. So for example, you have multiple families. When maybe Zitoni's kid is back from school, you could, maybe help his kid do their homework. Or when his kid isn't there to do the chores, then maybe your kid is able to do the chores, the communal cooking, or whatever it is, right? So these are some of the ideas that then we are connecting into the art space or into our art practices and essentially the gallery, program. Another is an environment built on communal care. And then again, if you're living in a space or in a compound with multiple people or different people, you'd have to understand, the way to deal with them, right? The way to show up for them, as you're saying. So, it might be true. I don't have salt in my house today, so please go to Auntie Yige's house and get salt for us. All these things, it's some of these things that we are also adopting. A flexible and adaptive social ecosystem. And again, where hierarchies are broken, so, there are no strict or no just one way of doing things, right? You have multiple, exit points, you have multiple entry points as well. And also a living archive of oral knowledge, right? So you have people from diverse backgrounds, coming to live in the same space. So someone from, for example, the Akan, ethnic group, or the Ga ethnic group who are living together. Then that also means, sharing food, right? Communal food, sharing food. It's also teaching you about heritage, how they dress, how they live, or certain norms or certain customs they have, grown to learn or become used to. So then again, is this space that's very it's very easy to sort of dismiss, but then it carries all these very important aspects and notions that I felt, sort of resonated with the kind of gallery structure or gallery program I wanted to develop and build. So this is a picture of a compound house, a typical compound house in Ghana. So as you can see, this is one unit, this is another, that's another, and that's another. So you usually have the forecourt or the foreground, where maybe kids play, someone cooks, or you just hang out to chat in the evening or whatever it is. Usually it's a communal bathhouse, a communal kitchen, so there's a rota where every family is supposed to do their chores every day. And so these are some of the things we are trying to tap into. This is a research done by Kukwa Manfo, which I borrowed for this presentation. So she has also done some work into the Ghanaian compound house within the architectural discipline. So this is a sort of a structure of how it is. It almost looks like a floor plan, right? But then in the compound house, sort of construction, no one has a floor plan, right? So it happens out of the need or the necessity for it to exist. Right, so then architects are not developing or are not building compound houses. They are building apartments and high-rise, penthouses and things like that. So the first thing is, now this is going back to, the ethos of the compound house, and then now compound house gallery itself. So then, as I mentioned earlier, it's an artist-led, it's an artist-living. So it's founded, it's led, and it's produced by artists themselves. Right, so now we are cautious, we are sensitive to each other's needs and the kinds of sort of ideas we are trying to put out there. It prioritizes the needs, voices, and imaginations of Ghanaian practitioners, and also it rejects the top-to-down bottom, or the top-to-down bottom institutional models in favor of in favor of peer-driven, creation. Again, where I mentioned where then the gallery director becomes the top, right? So in certain situations, I've dealt with certain galleries where it's impossible to meet the gallery director or the gallery founder, right? So they usually have an intern who is making decisions. And sometimes, you don't really get the full essence or grasp the full, idea of what the gallery is presenting to the artist. So there are certain artists who are sort of on a rota of a gallery where they sometimes get to speak to the gallery director just once, because then he seems to be that person at the top. And we never get to meet him until there's a dinner or there's like a yearly whatever get together it is. So for us, it's that kind of structure where privilege isn't given to the director, the curator, the artist, or whoever is producing an exhibition or help producing a program for the gallery, right? So that's something we sort of try to break down, the hierarchy within the gallery structure. So here you find certain familiar faces in there. And this was Building Band's exhibition. It was a very ambitious exhibition at the time, so we had to, rebuild, and restructure, architecture to fit some of the ideas he was working with. So then we had the privilege of, getting support, by fellow artists, and most of these guys are people who are either my mates or my juniors or my seniors from the university, and that's again what blaxTARLINES sort of offers, right? People to show up, people to offer support, and most of these guys I never called anyone. I had people to work. But then these guys just showed up and they brought stuff, they started working. I remember Hassan came one day and he brought his tape measure and was measuring. I'm like, bro, what are you doing? He said, Ban told him to do something, and I didn't even know. So I was like, whatever, bro, just get it on with. So, these are some of the attitudes that sort of builds Compound House and makes it, essential to also our ethos again. So next slide is it serves as a space for experimentation. When we talk about experimentation, we really mean experimentation in terms of how exhibition making is being thought of and how gallery programming is being thought of, right? So no shade, I'll just move on. So when we talk about experimentation, there are certain artists who are thinking beyond the paradigm that the gallery presents. So, for example, when a gallery engages an artist, they are telling the artist, okay, our space can accommodate 12 works of maybe 100 by 200. So then that's where the artist is starting from, right? So if an artist is making a work that's like maybe 300 or 400 meters, it means they'll have to scale it down to what the gallery could offer. So then, there are artists who somehow, get limited in the kind of work they want to present or in how they want to make exhibitions. So for us, it's also important to, have experimentation at our core so that we are able to be flexible and open up to multiple ideas. So again, it encourages risk-taking and unconventional exhibition making. It supports politically sensitive, socially engaged artistic forms, and it also operates as a laboratory for new ideas, processes, and collaborative methods. For this, I would use Samuel's exhibition again as an example. So if you look at this space, okay, this isn't the actual space, but this was where the space, this is how it looked prior to building this space and this space. So, Samuel had this idea. Again, I was telling you about the first exhibition we did. It was a three-sided exhibition. The first one was in Frankfurt, then the second one was in Ghana. I don't know when the third one is going to be. Zambia. So the second one was what Samuel proposed to us in collaboration with Tracy. So Tracy is the in-house curator of Compound House. She's like Tracy Nakoshi Thompson. She's an artist, also a curator, so an artist curator working within both disciplines. So Samuel's work was very well thought through, was very thorough in terms of how the work was going to be displayed, or I'm using generic gallery or art terms, how the work was going to be displayed, but now it was how the work was going to be built. So now the work was built around the space, to situate itself within what the space could offer. So that's the reason I told you we had to also redesign, Tracy had to redesign the space and also to build certain structures that would fit into the context of what he was dealing with, what his work was dealing with. Because of time, I wouldn't like to go into what his work is about. So these are some of the forms we're dealing with. So I think Zitoni and Puto or Alan, I don't know if you guys saw this exhibition, or the very first time you came in 2022. Or Nantumi, okay. Yeah, Nantumi, okay. So that's where it was. Again, we're a nomadic and networked space. So we function as a mobile, flexible project house. This isn't as a result of just sort of a theoretical ethos or sort of system we are trying to get into. It stems out of a need for it, right? So, for example, when I first wanted to start a gallery, I wanted a space because that was the thing. You're starting a gallery, you need a space. Where is the space? But then I just got to realize in Ghana, things are just outpriced. It was too expensive for me to start. I couldn't even rent anything. Anything suitable, because of the kind of ambitious, type of projects and multi, forms we wanted to deal with. So then we had to sort of adapt to that economic situation or that, lack of being able to get a physical space. So then we had to adjust our programming to fit into what would be available or what we could accommodate. So that's what would make Compound House a nomadic space where we are able to move freely. And that even also allows us to be able to engage multiple programs, multiple artists at a time. Although the gallery is still small structured and small staffed. Another thing is to build temporary infrastructures to enable off-grid artistic interventions. It also cultivates regional and international network for circulation and exchange. So this was the second exhibition we hosted. This was a solo exhibition by Hassan. This was a 3-sided exhibition, and it was all supposed to simultaneously open or be opened at the same time. And because of Hassan's work and because of also the research that went into this work, we found it necessary to situate an exhibition within all these places. And these are places that have somehow influenced the kind of work he does, either materially or culturally or just historically. Hassan is originally from Kumasi, so his work also borrows ideas of architecture from all these different places. So it was somehow inherent for us to also have an exhibition of this scale. Initially, when we talk about being radical, these are some of the challenges you are faced with. Initially, when Hassan brought the idea, I was like, no, we are not doing this. I straight out just, ignored it and, cut it out. But then from conversations with Tracy, we found a way around how to situate and how to navigate, logistics and also just move things around. And Hassan had a very extensive, studio practice, so he had a lot of works to show. And so that was sort of necessary. It had to happen, right? So for me, I was also on the adventure to make it happen. So this was the exhibition in Accra at the Museum of Science and Technology. Again, we are also collaborating and engaging with institutions locally who would be willing to open their doors for us to have some of these exhibitions. So this was the exhibition in Accra. This was in Kumasi at the KNUST Jubilee Mall. We had to get a space there, and this was in Tamale Red Clay, where Hassan had an installation of his outdoor pieces. These were semi obstructed geometric forms, steel forms. Others were flags he made out of his own paintings. In Tamale, obviously, we had Ibrahim and his team who were glad enough to welcome us and provide us with so much infrastructure and logistics to be able to make this happen. So then I don't know how far Accra is from Tamale, but it's that's it in the map. I mean the Ghana map is the one. It's the one in the background, right? So Tamale is somewhere here. This is Accra, Kumasi. So what we had to do, the logistics was crazy, but then we had to really sit down and plan everything. And thanks to Samuel was visiting us in Ghana at the time, so he was able to also support us and help us plan how we would make this thing happen, because it was a logistical nightmare. So what we had to do is we had to install the works in Tamale first, come down to Kumasi, install the works in Kumasi, come down to Accra, install the works in Accra, open the exhibition in Accra, travel back to Kumasi, open the exhibition in Kumasi, and then travel back and open the exhibition in Tamale. And I remember when we finally opened the exhibition in Accra, I was like, well, we have installed everything, so that's it. Yeah. Not also knowing some of the financial implications of all these travels and logistics and taking everyone along. Yeah. So then we went to Kumasi, opened it, went to Tamale, opened it. And that was a breaking point for me. I remember at the end, I remember there was this day, we had opened the exhibition, and the next day I just decided to rest for the whole day before I traveled. And I think it was Selim or someone who came and was like, bro, you look so broken. And I was like, yes, I'm broken, right? So, I mean, there's nothing I could do about it, but these are some of the exciting things for me. It was exciting because we were able to pull it off. We were able to show that, with little resources, we are still able to make things happen like of this scale. So that's it. So another, ethos of Compound House is rooted in communal values. So the idea to be inspired by the structure and the spirit of the Ghanaian Compound House, prioritize shared resources, collective dialogue, and interdependence, create a sense of home and belonging for cultural workers. So the idea is also to extend the idea of art making beyond just the artist studio and just beyond the gallery space, to also engage other people of the community, specifically kids and school kids who are also getting to understand or learn art. Now, when you look at the Ghanaian educational system, art is like the last thing that anyone thinks of, right? So if a kid is bad at home, his dad is telling you, as a punishment, you are going to do art or you're going to paint on the streets. If you don't become a doctor, if you don't learn how to become a doctor, you're going to paint on the streets. So it's an idea to also embody the spirit of communal, sharing and, extending the artist's practice beyond their studio into workshops. So these are some of the workshops we've held for most of the exhibitions and interventions we've had. This was a very recent one in this year at Avenida Hotel. This is another one. This was actually a panel discussion. Another thing is also reimagining institutional models, which challenges the conventional curatorial gallery and museum structures, propose fluid, adaptable modes of organizing and presenting art, and centers community knowledge and lived experiences as a form of expertise. So again, there are artists or there are practitioners or disciplines that necessarily do not conform to the standards or the structures of art that would allow a gallery to engage with it, right? So a gallery is usually looking for an artwork, a physical work, a physical painting to hang, to sell, or to whatever. But then we are also interested in other forms of disciplines that would allow that. So earlier this year, the artistic intervention we hosted was with a researcher called Manuela, who was researching into old Ghanaian architecture and the history of Ghanaian hotels, state-owned hotels and things like that. So we structured a 3-day program that included a kids workshop, a panel discussion, and also this artistic intervention where we invited other artists to present work that responded to some of the things she was working with. And interesting enough, she invited me to also present my work, which she felt was sort of responded well to it. So I have my own artwork in there, which I didn't feel comfortable doing, but yeah, did after all. So this is also the space. Another thing is we present ourselves as an incubation and a support system. So it serves as a platform for emerging and established Ghanaian artists, provides space for artists, thinkers, cultural workers to test new ideas, encourages long-term artistic growth rather than transactional engagements.
As a gallerist, as a cultural worker, what are the opportunities, especially for us as Africans, transcontinental Africans?
If you say opportunities, can you expand a bit on what you mean by opportunities? Opportunities for, yeah.
Okay, for example, the way the gallery system works was brought to us from the West. It's very definite, and as you've explained, it's a top-down thing. And as he explained earlier, the philosophy of the collective is to subvert this way of thinking. But there has to be practical ways to subvert this way of thinking that also allows for sustainable, livable ways. So as a person who's done this work before and who's continuously innovating around this work, what are the opportunities that would encourage people to break away from the traditional way of doing things?
I mean, then again, I've visited a couple of artist studios here, because I'll use it as an example because it's very fresh and some of the artists, most of them are also here. I see what artists are doing. For example, we went to Matt Kayem's exhibition and I thought it was like in a gallery space. So I went there and we're just talking because it's also close to a gallery space. Yes. And then, out of conversation, he told me he had to rent the space himself. So I was a bit confused. I was like, how did this happen? Then, I mean, that's essentially, setting up a gallery structure within his own work, within his own practice, which is obviously viable, which I think a lot of artists are doing now or are doing in Uganda and Kampala. So out of the maybe underdeveloped or underutilized resources infrastructurally and also in terms of scholarship, that is where those places are where the opportunities are, right? To tap into underutilized spaces, or just that back to the idea of sharing, or tapping into the different aspects or multitudes of opportunities where we can all benefit from, right? Yeah, I think that's it.
Thank you. So Samuel, to interlude us into your presentation, Nuna has shared largely on what it means to subvert the top-down hierarchy, and you've experienced it working with him. What would your experience be, and how would that be practical for other artists to sort of emulate?
I think it's a difficult one. Yeah. It's not that easy to just work in such light as it. It comes out. It sounds smooth in theory, but practically is very challenging. Where you as an artist tend to be also a part of the gallery decision making of how other artists are supposed to show their works. And as Kwasi and Nuna said earlier, with that peer-to-peer discussions or like idea development, I think this helps in that way. But it also depends also the interest of you, the artist. Like I said, what are you looking for? And that leads you to work in that light. So it's always about questioning what you are looking for and what you want to gain from these kind of collaborations. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. So I'm Samuel Baah Kortey. I'm an artist and a researcher. From time to time, I tend to also curate. And both with Nuna and Kwasi spoke a lot about the practice we've been engaging in for some years now. But I decided to also talk more about how we put it to work. So as an artist, I work in series. And this is a particular project I've been working on for 5 to 6 years now. This is heavily inspired by a prompt or an instruction. The Last Supper, not necessarily the painting, but the instruction of like doing something to remember a sacrifice being made. And to tap into my art history, and also to look, into the practice of, other artists and, how they have represented things. This particular image, became very important for, this series. To just look at it, I think this painting had been interpreted in many ways. But for me as an artist, I'm looking at it in a multi-sensorial way. As in, they're dining together, the conversations involved, and also the prompt. So reflecting it to the noun, as in, how do we do things to, remember others, to keep others in mind? And this series actually tap into, commemoration, object of, commemoration, people alive and the dead. And I think we've explored various ways in understanding this subject, to understand Eurocentric way of honoring people, or like sculptures building monuments around city centers. I realize in our cultures we find ways to honor people through dirges, through music, through poems, as in how a language could be fused with a certain practice of someone who had lived years ago. But in reflecting it to the noun, and also training in the Department of Painting and Sculpture, and also tapping into the blaxTARLINE ideologies, one thing we are mostly encouraged to do is to go to town. So this project starts from town. I think those who have visited Ghana might be used to these kind of billboards and posters. So this is a 60-year birthday celebration. Yeah. And this is one legend, one music icon. I think Ghanaians growing up in the late 80s, 90s, early 2000s, and even till now, this musician, is mostly registered in their subconsciousness. Like, you tend to hear his music everywhere you go. And this was a billboard that I erected 2 years ago. And sad, he died 3 years ago, 3 months ago, with that lumbar. And this leads me to our huge billboard also posters for, the dead. So we have these cultures. I'm interested in, as an artist, I'm interested in norms that tend to camouflage itself in our societies. And I tend to look at ways to highlight them in my practice. So it being, visuals, sonic, food, spices, I research into almost everything. But I limit, the kind of work I do depending on the experience I want to create. So my work are not I wouldn't say defined by painting or sculpture or installation. Whatever works, I go with the flow. If it's supposed to be an experimentation with food, that would, capture the research or whatever I'm looking for. That's the approach I take in the making of, these works. And to tap more into, celebratory objects. And this is, I would say, a popular transport service in Ghana, the VIPs. I don't know if you guys are aware of it. It's more like the bus we took, global coach here. And they run through, almost every corner of the country. And this guy is one of the founders of this company. He's mostly known as Naso 1990. But this particular interest, I used to see him all the time on these buses. But the interest of looking deeper into who he is was through a music I was listening to, and how musicians also tend to immortalize other people through music. It's very it's an iconic move to think of how maybe people would build statues, and you just get to experience it if you are going around the area where this statue is mounted. But musicians, making music about people where automatically you tend to sing their names, like they register in your subconscious, like you keep on repeating. I would say a popular Ghanaian music we would all, relate to, I think, would be a piece by that Lumba, Teresa. And he sings about someone who had, really helped him in his, journey. And the way he speaks about this lady, we all sing it, with our passion, without even not knowing this person. So, I found, this approach very interesting and leading, to my practice or to my work. So, I'll show you a lot of, commemorative objects, and how it's being used throughout, the continent, whether being birthday celebration souvenirs or how should I say it, marks, wedding marks and all that. So this is the VIP bus station in Kumasi, where you still have his funeral poster there to date. He died in 2017, but he still lives with us till now. Yeah. With musicians on this is Black Sherif on our curators, what you guys call taxis. In the Barbados, there is a practice of also celebrating people when they turn 100. So they are made into stamps, and they tend to travel around the world just to show their kind of contribution, or to celebrate them in a way. So this is also part of what I've been looking at. So I'll go through the slides very quick. I think we don't have much time. Yep. So this is a campaign in Ghana. We have a way we also bottle water. This is what we call pure water, sachet water. But there's a campaign sachet water. So yeah, these are perfumes also branded, to honor certain people. And also tapping into, I would say, the continent, the inscriptions on your taxis. It's the same way with Kenya matatus, where you would have spray painting of, artists where people would like, and these kind of work, moving around from one space to the other. Stickers, that tend to be on bodies. And yeah, to also currencies. I collect a lot of currencies, and I'm also very interested in, people and nation decide to put on, their currency. That tends to, travel from one space to the other. So yeah, this is from 85, Uganda. Also tapping into, commemorative objects, and also things we can't speak about this and forget portrait fabrics. I don't know if you're aware of portrait fabrics. So on your right, is a typical example of portrait fabrics. During the Pan-African movement or the African independence struggle, there were a lot of fabrics made, to celebrate their independence. And early stages, people would just do it, to honor this particular moment. But over time, it became something that, yeah, people would do for funerals, weddings, birthday ceremony. It depends on who is interested in it and doing it. So this is 94, the Queen's visit to Ghana. Yeah. This is also the first portrait fabrics done to celebrate the independence of Ghana in 1957. Also a scarf, accompany it. And yeah, also to tap into the noun. A recent one, also done. Yeah, to honor Koyoko. Tapping into these fabrics. We have this from Zambia. Can it come on there? So yeah, one may ask, how am I, dealing with all these? So I feel like as an artist, there is a time to also revisit a particular moment to, rewrite a certain story, or you could also revisit the noun to also archive certain moments. I think the way we read history is just, I compare it to social media influencers. I think if you're not writing, if you're not archiving the moment, no one is doing it for you. It's just like, imagine me coming to Uganda for a week and going back and I'm telling people about the whole country. It sounds crazy. And this is what people have been doing over time. This is also how I feel like we artists, it is our responsibility to, document, certain histories that we wouldn't like for it to be read in a whole different way. So this is a project I did in 2023. The whole year, I spent the whole year in Italy. And this was a fellowship or a year residency in a villa called Villa Romana. And to understand this space and understanding myself as an African, a black guy in Italy, in a villa where I'm being served, I think there was something wrong. So I decided to look deeper into the archives, look at, why I'm here. But I realized it wasn't because I'm intelligent or I'm smart, but there were certain efforts of, others that made my voice audible, that made, my work presentable to others for me to be selected to be in this space. So I did a huge research on Afro-Italians and looking at the approach to things to make home accessible for someone like me. I'm sure one thing most of us, would agree to from traveling from one place to the other is on the conversation of food. When we talk about home, what are you talking of? Is it, for me, it could be the sense of humor from friends. It could be a certain smell. It could be the way our cityscape is, is structured. And yeah, back to also food, spices and all that. So this research looked into farmers, Afro shop owners, and the people that wouldn't have the privilege to have ended up in these portrait fabrics. So this is what this research was about, and this is a 40-meter painting made, in honor of these people. Another one is Namama. So this is a piece I showed with Nuna in the show they did in 2024, Constellation 2. And this was in Accra, Ghana. And this research into, I would say, our mothers, or the women that played a major role in the independence struggle, but their voice wasn't audible enough to have been highlighted in various conversations around the independence struggle. So yeah, this was a piece, under them, titled Namama Duam. And yeah, this is, so the series is more like, site specific, from one space to the other. This was in Spain, Mallorca. This was in Rome, Villa Medici. And yeah, this was in Frankfurt. But this is a piece, honoring Amata Edu. Ayubi spoke of, her earlier. And I would say a current piece I'm working on that would take, I would say, whole new direction in terms of looking at it from its being a whole performative process. So this is Robert Mensah. He died in 1971. He was known to be one of the best goalies or goalkeepers from the African continent. But anyone growing up in Ghana might have experienced this man, but not knowing this is the guy we're talking about. We have a game we play, as kids, but it's narrate a whole story of this guy. And hardly, as I was saying also earlier, how we tend to, archive people sonically, and how we, push this narrative, and or honoring certain people that I felt wasn't that necessary. To dive into the archives of such a person, or it's very difficult to tap into or research about him and know the kind of work he did. So as part of the project I do is to revisit a time like this, to make moments like that, as in to make fabrics, or to make projects that would honor a person like that. So with this particular project is to collaborate with fashion designers, printing houses, make special fabrics, and make a whole walkway to honor a person like that. Yeah. So yeah, I would go through. So these are early stages of what I'm working on for this person. Same with this image or this work. Also, it's a work in progress. There's also to honor a Ghanaian footballer called Charles Taylor. So yeah, back to also the funeral posters or billboards. These are our reality in Ghana. Death is not the end in our space. It is a beginning, and it's not just in the Ghanaian culture. In most cultures, death is just the beginning. And as much as a community would announce the birth of someone, that's also how we choose to announce the death of someone leaving the community. And I've been researching into these posters and these billboards for some time. These are very autobiographical. A huge picture of a dead person surrounded by living people. And if I say that, yeah, and you can find them almost everywhere, every corner, and they are huge. You could see, yeah. And yeah, these are also the normal size posters. And you could see this person, and I don't know if I could zoom in, but you'd see all the relatives, mentioned here. So it's an information where you could also trace it from the colonial projects, and how we received tracing the making of these posters, I found some coming from the Fayum Egyptian tombs, where there were specific, portraits done for the dead, and also the British, the Portuguese also had a certain approach to these things. But there is an approach to it from also Ghanaian Deges, where we tend to also approach it from an autobiographical point of view. Yep. So this is a current piece. It's a collaboration with artist Emeka Ogbo in the current Nigeria Lagos Photo Festival, where we tend to look at honoring also certain people as well. This is titled Baku Nsiefuno. It's a project. It's a multi-sensorial project. It has smell, sound, and these light boxes, highlighting the lives of these people.
Thank you so much for sharing this. It's really incredible. This work reminds me almost of the talking lessons from the coast. On the coast, there are wrappers that ladies wrap around their waist, and the ladies of the coast discovered that if you wanted to send a secret message to your co-wife, you just go to the factory, order the wrapper, and then walk by your co-wife's door so they can read the message on your wrapper. So I find this very fascinating. And obviously the light boxes also remind me of the, I think, Chinese cultural practice of releasing the ancestors into the ether. All right, I don't know how much time we are, so I'm a bit nervous. I want to open up the conversation for some questions. I would like to give the opportunity to Colin.
You've given us today and the knowledge that you've shared, we truly appreciate. I'm just speaking on behalf of so many, especially those that inhabit the treehouse in Masaka. My question is, I am pretty sure you guys have had incredible experiences around Kampala and obviously Masaka, where you just came from a few days ago. Out of curiosity and also personal interest, for a number of years we've been making comparisons between art scenes across the continent, where, through different discussions, people have been trying to figure out where we stand as a country in the context of African contemporary art. So, with your experiences of Uganda so far, what do you think, genuinely, what do you think are the missing parts as compared to Ghana? I know it must be a sophomore question, but I don't know. It's a genuine question, by the way.
Right. Yeah, and it's one that we are constantly having to also come to terms with. This is, I would say, this is partly why for us solidarity is a key strategy through which to go beyond or to exceed the limits or the caps, because there's no situation. You see, since the capitalist modernity that was ushered in since late 18th century, early 19th century, has so effectively oriented us towards competition. We're stuck in our work life, in our geopolitical engagement, in our everyday situations. Competition really seems to be the spirit by which we engage each other. And this is extremely toxic, because there's always there's no context that has figured it out in its entirety. we're always operating on some kind of lack or incapacity or ignorance, or it plagues us. As human as we are, there's none of us who possesses absolute knowledge yet. And so, the way to work around this is really to share and to be in context where you are, constantly evolving and growing together. This is what underlines, this is why we take a collectivist approach to what we do. It's not because we are nostalgic for a pre-colonial Africa where, everybody shares everything, or, we're always living in peace. It's only because if we insist on our autonomy, we are only entrenching our lacks. We're always plagued by lack. So how do we leverage our strengths? By going beyond this atomization that we have always been, pummeled with. So for me, yes, there are things that in coming here, I see how the means by which artists are thinking and working, especially, visiting the art schools, Chambogo and Makerere. I see how Makerere reminds me of what KNUST used to be before blaxTARLINES. Yeah. So this is what I mean by the shared histories. There are really things that we ought to, there are things that are common to us that have shaped our futures and our presents. And it's up to us to diagnose them, to identify which ones are poisonous, which ones we need to numb ourselves to inoculate ourselves from, and to also just vaccinate ourselves, with. So it's constant. Like, I see the way you guys are intervening in your physical infrastructure, building galleries, studios. This is, like I said, it's the current phase we are in, but it seems to come, it seems to be the norm here, and so there's a lot for us to pick in that regard. If based on your observations, you also identify things that and so it's always like that, things we have that so it's that tango that I think works, rather than a model of, we're always lacking, we're always incapable, we're always, that's how slaves are oriented to think. That's how, that's how the working class are also manipulated to think, that they don't have any power. But it's so for us, we just abolish all of these and say, we're here. Let's work. If you don't want to work, it's fine, but if you want to, then there's work to be done. This is how we work. So for us, your economic interventions are extremely inspiring. You, for example, by enabling 2 years ago this exhibition, in Ghana we've been struggling. Ibrahim has been a leading figure in this regard, but others are also, just striving to create ways by which we ourselves can speak for ourselves. But it seems to be easy going here, and that's one thing I've kept in my head. We'll keep coming back.
Well, we have to do what we have to do.
Right.
Definitely. Keep going, because we can't keep relying on institutions that are non-existent or funding that doesn't exist. Right. I think it's upon us and to take it up as a responsibility. Right. As creatives, to just keep the light, burning.
Yep.
Thank you so much. Do you have something to add before? Okay.
Thank you. My name is Alan Chakoni. I happen to be part of the people who went for travel somewhere nice in 2021. It was item we had 2021 was the first time we went there. That's when we formed actually we had the residency with 1957. And my question, I do have a question with two other questions in it. The first one is coming from, I would like to get some more elaboration on one part about economic emancipation, especially the last one. Some more elaboration to that. But this is the other question before you go on. The other question also goes back on the other side of intellectual emancipation. If you also go.
I know what you're talking about.
Where was intellectual emancipation?
Intellectual emancipation.
It's here.
What was part of intellectual emancipation, most especially about if you could kind of highlight something to do with Asafo Black. I know Nuna and Baah, you are part of Asafo Black.
Yeah.
And I remember being in a presentation around July 2021, and Nuna you did talk about it. You probably just bypassed it. I would like, one of the reasons why I'm airing it out is because Asafo Black is a collective, right?
Yeah.
And we here, because it's a collective, is also doing the same, or is mirroring, something that could also be brought to light through this kind of becoming that is coming on back and forth. Is that the second question?
Yes.
The third one. The third one could be maybe someone else would ask, but please could you try to, Baah is here and Nuna is here and you guys are part of a something now. Please tell us something.
Yeah, so Baah, can you please go back to the last slide on my... Go on fast.
Tony, your people know the play.
Yeah, so talking about economic emancipation here, I was talking about reducing self-reliance on external gatekeeping by strengthening a local collector base. First, literally what it says. But you see, there's this idea that to be able to make it, to be able to successful, you need an intervention by the West, which I strongly oppose to. But I also strongly benefit from it strategically, right? So it's almost like when you're given tools, right? Someone is given a hammer, someone is given a mallet, right? All essentially does the same thing, but one drives the nail faster or deeper, right? You see, the issue with sort of economically emancipating ourselves has to also do with this, again, top-to-down approach, right? Whenever I speak to an artist, or most artists who approach me, who I speak to, there's always this conversation of, I've been ripped off by a gallery, I've been ripped off by a dealer, I've been ripped off. And sometimes like, how? So I almost like analyze the situation, like surgically analyze the situation, listen to everything, just on the base level of it, but then, deeper. And what I've come to realize is, let me give this example, right? So an artist is willing to ship their work off to a gallery in London to put it in their gallery and sell it, and then whatever the percentage split is, they're comfortable with it. But because the idea of my work being in London sort of, expands that idea of my work travels far, I'm more exposed, or my work is exposed, my practice is more exposed. But then within the African continent, we found it very difficult, also due to like certain dire and practical, situations. For example, being able to ship a work from, for example, Ghana to Uganda might be more expensive than shipping it from Ghana to Vienna or Ghana to London or whatever, right? So there are some of these, sort of systems that makes it extremely difficult to work within ourselves on the African continent. But for me, establishing the gallery, one thing I said to myself was I was trying to place all these works on the African continent, right, in Ghana. I didn't want a situation where, and also in the past, maybe 5 years ago, I did this research and this paper I wrote on the Benin bronzes. That was when, the conversation around repatriation was very huge. And then, looking back at these things, some of these works or these objects were pelted from our palaces and museums, right? So that was a military, adventure where most of these works were, stolen or, ripped off from us. But now, artists are willingly, selling the work, and it's all going, and none of it is staying on the continent, right? So in 100 years to come, if maybe Colin is going to build a museum of contemporary African arts, where are the works going to come from? The works of 50 years ago, where are they going to come from? Do we have to go back to loan them? Now that's going to be a different conversation. So it's either you're buying the works back or then you're loaning them. But then imagine something that belongs to you, you have to loan it, write a paper, loan it, and all the paperwork it has to do it. So, right, so for me, it was also, practically seeking out collectors and building collectors, right? Because obviously we have the money. I'll speak for Ghana, we have the money. The money is there. I can see what the money is being used for. But then to be able to bring it into our space, that's what matters. To be able to store and archive culture and, keep the remnants of it still in our locality, that's what matters to me. So there are so many sort of interventions I use, like as a business person as well, right, to be able to entice local collectors. I mean, it's a bit deep, or it's a bit multi-layered, so I wouldn't be able to speak more on it. But yeah, these are some of the approaches. So for me, I'm actively engaging potential collectors, or I'm actively building collector bases locally in Ghana amongst young people and amongst the older generation. So it's being able to build and sort of sustain networks and relationships amongst people who have the capacity to be able to, afford and, develop this type of attitude of collecting. Yeah.
Maybe just when we say economic, what we mean by that is the conditions of production, distribution, exchange, and consumption. So we mean a very that's the infrastructural level that we are talking about. The earlier phase, the intellectual phase, was more so dealing with the historical, theoretical, philosophical underpinnings of things we had inherited as art, which we took for granted. But when you connect the dots, you see where they are coming from, how these biases are inherited, and so on. And because we are working in the context of an art school, this work needed to be done. So at this phase, at the economic level, we're thinking of artists, studios, residencies, museums, galleries, art schools, and all these professional categories that emerge. Like what consequences that has for criticism, for practicing as an art historian, as a dealer, as a gallerist. So it's that kind of, it's that wholesale transformation that we are really, hitting at. And we know it will take time. That's why I was mentioning that we've had to get this far after 22 years, and so we are steadily building. This is but towards the next century-long project. So how do we, think across these areas? That's what I meant, at least.
Okay. Now you just have to project your voices. Okay, we're back.
But it's very reminiscent of Ghana.
We have one more question.
They do have a question.
The question we had
Okay, so
intellectual emancipation.
okay, so with Asafo Black, so there is a lot we have to share, but time didn't permit us. Like, for example, anyone who have been to my studio would know, how should I even put this? But yeah, Asafo Black is more like a collective under the blaxTARLINE collective. blaxTARLINE becomes the tree where collectives like Asafo Black, Exit Frame, Soul 6, and all other collectives become more like the branches. So we tend to also work in other ways to, later meet the blaxTARLINE demand. I don't know if I'm explaining this well, but we've been busy with personal projects at the moment, and in next year we are thinking of doing something together again. But as you know, Nuna being part of one way or the other, we tend to work, on a daily basis. But coming together as Asafo Black had been on a break for some time. But next year, we're thinking of coming together with something. Yep.
So I think, one thing about Asafo Black is, when we first sort of came together to form this collective, it was out of a need for us to exhibit our works, curate our works, and also just put it out there for people to see, or the general public to see. So one thing that we had to do was to be very strategic in ways we're dealing with institutions or spaces we're showing our work in. So at the time, we're all, practicing as independent artists, making work independently. And then so we sort of engaged, radically by invading spaces, right? Or using, bureaucratic systems to actually deal with some of these things. So one of the exhibitions we did was in the National Theatre of Ghana. That's where usually plays, productions, and movie screenings are held. But then it's also supposed to be a space for art exhibition, music, all these other things. So for us, we felt it like this is the apex. And for, young, unknown, artists or whoever didn't know us, how do we engage in a space like this where where usually a lot of people will say, this space, they will never, accept us or show our work. So we had to then engage that bureaucratic, structure to actually write letters, follow up, show, be there on their necks, try and be insisting, right? And some of these guys, they don't know anything about art. Most of them are administrators. So it was also a way for us to, the way it's more like the way an evangelist would work, right? He's from a church, he goes out there to spread the gospel. That was also our way of disseminating and spreading the gospel. But then, as the collective evolved, we began to realize that there was a certain mantle that had to, where we had to, demystify this idea of the independent practice and the independent work, right? So we wanted to build practices that went beyond physical and tangible, art practices into more intangible and more socially engaged, activities or projects. So one of those were the Black Seed Project, the Asafo Black Mobile Library, and what else? That's it, the Black Seed and the Mobile Library. And then we had a series of online interviews, studio visits, talk like Asafo Black vibes through the wire and things like that. Another thing is that the attitude we had was a bit, how do I say, IB? And it was more tapping into the pop culture, some of these attitudes where it wasn't just, if you know thing. It was more or less also making spaces where it was very convivial. So for example, one of the exhibitions we had, maybe I didn't speak about it, called Holy Grail. The exhibition didn't look like an exhibition. It looked like a nightclub, right? I'm a type of person, or we are a type of people who like to come together, sit down, drink, talk, just have a good time, right? But then I also felt we could bring these. How could we bring these two things together? So we had to also make the space conducive, right? We had to make it look like a space where you walk in, you're not intimidated by the white spaces, and then there's this artwork hanged where they say "do not touch," right? It was a space where you could spill a drink on something, right? So we invited. We used to throw parties. Let me just say as that we used to throw a lot of parties. That's what we used to do every day. We're throwing parties every day, having people come in, like some of the guys who were rapping, singing, girls who are modeling. I don't know. We're doing we're doing a lot of things, right? So for me, that's also another way to sort of like spread the word where people would come to understand that art is just not tangible, but it could also go beyond something that's intangible and just fleeting. Yeah.
Thank you so much. We have about 5 minutes to the top of the hour, or the close of the hour. So how many questions you will have, just for efficiency? One? Okay. Oh, two? Over there? Okay. All right, so we'll have from Charity.
Good evening, all.
Good evening.
Happy to be here. So, you have a very profound and collective strategy of how you run things. But there's something intriguing about your concept. It's very rich, and everyone would like to be part of it. That's to be honest. But there's one thing that is lingering in our minds. Okay, per se, I will say myself. What about the part of sustainability of, say, maybe your studio spaces and your daily lives, apart from just saying you're doing art? How do you get the money and funds to manage your art careers? Because there's a narrative of not selling work, exhibit and retain, so that we have maybe people come and view, and also have exchange programs or art exchange kind of narratives. The problem we have to understand that we need to share these elements so that we all understand how can we get funding for the practices. Because basically speaking, almost 80% of creatives are suffering and struggling getting funds to do the work. Some of them are doing some other pieces of jobs out there, and you cannot balance. Sometimes there's that idea of you can't serve two masters at a go, because you can lose focus or you can lose track of time. So a little bit, if you could narrate about that. Thank you.
Brian, I think this is a very interesting question, and I think that's also one thing I would say we are also learning here, where artists also have other streams of income. It's very inspiring to see an artist having his farm close to the house, having the store close, and at the end of the day finding ways to work to also feed back their practice. And I think if you follow the conversation so well, Kwasi, Nuna, highlights some of these challenges and also ways that we are thinking through it, and also back to economic emancipation. But personally, to reflect on myself as an artist, as a researcher, there are other ways I also work to feed back into the practice. I don't solely rely on the work that I'm making or to sell the work before I survive. So the other ways, I research with institutions. I'm assisting other artists with productions. Back home, I'm also making special commissions for institutions or companies that might need a service like that. So I was trained as a painter, as a sculptor, and early stages in my practice, where we used to make paintings, draw people, people's girlfriends, for their birthdays and all that. We did all that, and with time, we still find ways to keep these clients. We still feed these clients one way or the other, but not like maybe I'm still making drawings or portraits, But there are other ways we are thinking about these things, and also how to feed back into the practice. So not solely relying on ways of selling work before I could make the work. I don't know if your question is answered. No, would you add something?
Freedom is a desire. You know, and it comes at a price. The cost of experimentation, and to experiment is to say that you have a process without aim or end. And the market can only translate or commodify what it can totalize, what it can, you know, bring finality to, or what it can standardize. So artists have decisions to make. If you want your experiences or your objects to be market friendly, you work within those limits. You work with what the market wants, and you feed it. But if sometimes the market does not, and you know, cannot deal with what you are offering to it until it can totalize. It can only use it when it can encroach it. So there are artists who don't want this encroachment. It should be possible. So for us, it's not to say that there's one way to do this or that. It's more so that non-commodifiable form of art should also have a right to exist. And when it happens, that has consequences. You know, like it has transformative potential. That's why we say art is anything that is radically new. It's not familiar. You know, it changes our apparatuses of perception, you know, our modes of relation and being. So it's this thing we're talking about. So if you choose that direction, you understand the risks involved. You may have to, you know, be a mason or find a teaching job, find other ways to sustain it, but it's your decision. That's why it's the risk. And that's why it's freedom, because you are choosing those constraints. You see? Yeah.
Charity, thank you so much. I'm sure this is a topic we can talk until the cows come home. But
I just have a very brief question. I did step out, so I may have missed some of the presentation. If you covered this, you can just briefly say it. But I'm very curious about the afterlife of work that is created within your spaces. From what I saw, there are a lot of fantastic, ambitious, also in scale, very large projects that are being produced. But also just the process produces so many things, and I'm just curious, how do you work on the afterlife of all this work that is produced? I mean, here we have so many fantastic artists, but we actually don't know what happens to their work, you know, after it's had the exhibition. I mean, sometimes it's sold, or sometimes it's in storage. We don't really have like a contemporary art museum in which to put this work, so I'm just wondering if you have good infrastructures in place, or even when you are working with artists, if this is a critical thing, you also take time to address of what will the afterlife be like for your work.
A very, very relevant and important question. In one of our student visits, we encountered an artist who had who was a bit unsettled as to this issue, the afterlife. And after making these monumental pieces, what happens to them? You sell them. And then when you can't sell them, then you are frustrated. See, again, art is something that you'd have to bear, right? So again, out of that radicality, out of that curiosity, also out of that intention and that love to be able to make something or bring something to life, you also need to think of how you are keeping it, right? If that makes sense. You don't bring a child into the world and you don't know where they are going to sleep, you don't know where they are going to live after. So again, I usually tell a lot of artists who are working, and this is not to restrict them to a certain boundary or to restrict them to a certain form, but then you should also be intentional. The same way you are able to afford paints, right? Paints, brushes, all the materials you use for your work. That's the same way you should also be thinking of other ways to be, other ways of keeping the work or keeping the work alive after it has been made or after it has been produced. Luckily enough, within the or within the Ghanaian art space, a lot of artists are buying other artists' works, building institutions, keeping some of these works, building very strong art collections. That's one way. Again, another way as artists is also to see ourselves as institutions itself, right? This might sound a bit abstract, but let's just take it like how as it is, right? To see our practices or ourselves as institutions that would conserve the work. There are so many strategies. Right? I'll give you one example. One artist I worked with had a very monumental piece, and for us it was, shipping the work alone was crazy. The shipping, the custom duties we had to pay, the paperwork even, how to classify this artwork, what is it? So, after that work has gone, the truth is the artists didn't want it back because they didn't know how to keep it, they didn't know how to store it. So then I came up with this idea, let's build or let's initiate a traveling exhibition for this work. And for wherever this work goes to, the artist is getting paid. Yeah. Right? So then it's traveling, it gets somewhere, then we are not able to keep it traveling again. So then it stalls somewhere for a couple of years. Then an opportunity arises, then continue. By the time it gets to a point, maybe that artist might have gotten money where they can bring the work back, ship it back, or then keep it. Again, working with a certain artist or seeing an artist with that street, she was invited for the Stellenbosch Triennial in 2021, where she produced this monumental installation. But because of the way her work is, it's very, it's material, immaterial. It has a life form. It also has an afterlife form, right? So I remember when I saw the work, I didn't really even understand it because I wasn't there in person. So I saw pictures of it online. So I had to speak to her and ask her what does this mean? Because I'm also thinking a lot into logistics and traveling. So aside appreciating an artwork for what it is or the scale or whatever, I'm also interested in some of these practical things of logistics, shipping, storing, creating, and all that. Because this is also where I'm dealing with all these things all the time. So, and she told me she had to bend the work. She had to bend the work to keep the work alive, physically bend it, right? So again, because the work was somehow immaterial, after some time it's going to deteriorate. So it's either we leave it to deteriorate or then bend it. Sounds very radical. Sounds very someone would be like, how dare you bend an artwork, right? So again, there are multiple ways. I wouldn't be able to exhaust everything, but there are obviously strategies that artists could develop. And yeah, I mean, again, with dealing with institutions, you have to be very strong, and you have to know what you want and demand what you want. As hard as it might sound, but then again, artists are willing to sacrifice their autonomous practices and their independence for a Venice Biennale exhibition or which other big ones, right? So they would be so excited, but most of these biennales or whatever would be very sort of how do you call it? Wouldn't be able to afford all these kind of luxuries to be able to making these works sustain the afterlife. So yeah.
I think we are also supposed to, if you think about this too much, the work won't be done. That's I think one thing I realized. As an artist, constantly my mind, is creating, is trying to produce, and you have to think about all this before I make a work. I want to do it, and this is also over the time how I consider also my research or my interventions. I think if you have to just look at it as making a painting, a sculpture, an installation, something material, you also limit yourself in the making of the work. Just like the subject of love, musicians will sing about it, painters will paint about it, sculptors will make, filmmakers will make film about it. It's the same subject. So how would you also think about a particular subject you're trying to communicate, also in other forms, than just one that would also get a lot of implications, or you might not know how to deal with it after. So over time, as I say this all the time, I'm not limited to a material. I go with what works. At this particular moment, I'm supposed to, make a sonic intervention. That's what, work in the space. Because, the way people will read and, get to understand things, one might not get that. Someone has, experienced it in a whole different way. And at times, if we just limit it to also the sense of, just visuals, it's also, collapse it all. So there are other forms, other engagements that just making materially, producing things. You could also look at material like approach and also making things. Ephemeral pieces are also like, encourage, be also done. So there shouldn't be limits in the thinking, or else the work will be done.
Thank you so much for that. We are drawing close to the end of this. I will ask one more question for me. Are you accessible? Can somebody dive into your DMs and get your attention? How do we find if we want to work with you in the future?
Yes, we are accessible. And but I will, for the organizers, we will leave our emails and telephone numbers, social media accounts, so that we can continue, because that's also part of why we came as researchers. So we built our contacts and our network base. So yes, we're happy to, through Vodo, through this, but also as we're here, you can easily use it. We're happy to do that.
Otherwise, thank you so much. Big round of applause.
This opportunity to thank each and every one of you for showing up today. It's really humbling. I didn't expect the numbers to turn out this much. We are highly grateful and we'll continue to appreciate you for that. Thank you so much. Can you clap for yourselves? I also want to appreciate the blaxTARLINES representatives. Kwasi, Nuna and Baah. That is how they pronounce the name, Baah. Yeah, it's not been an easy experience. Since 2021, we've been having this program where we travel, in most cases 2 weeks maximum, and it's usually hectic. Back-to-back studio visits, programs here and there, and by the time you leave the country, you're exhausted. I remember the first time we went to Ghana in 2021, it was a bad time, because in Uganda we were under lockdown, and then in Ghana people were free. So it gave us this experience that I don't think we'll ever forget. Zitoni, Chakonye, Stacy, and Sheila Nachitende were the first group. That also informed my decision to go back and do my master's from Kumasi. Because sometimes when you hear about a place, you don't get to experience what's there. But I believe, according to what Zitoni talked about, that it's open to each and every one of us. This kind of program for the residency between underground and blaxTARLINES, where they take in 3 artists for 3 months, and then other groups also go in. So for those who are interested, please reach out to Zitoni, Nantume, or even me. Yeah, or even me. Yeah, because at the moment I'm standing in for underground, since Nantuma is not around. And Zituni is also here, Wamala is there, the three are here for Black Star Lines, so it can start from tonight. So we are looking forward to more events like this. We've used this space for the first time. And as we came in, Colin was making a joke that maybe we can have more talks here. This has really been insightful. Whenever we are enclosed in this environment, we don't get to experience what's out there. It's not about going to the studio and then you do what you really know as an artist. But then how open-minded are you? How willing are you to learn from others, to collaborate, and to work with other people? These are things that we live with tonight. So as we leave, I want to wish you a happy new year before it comes, because this is the last time you're meeting, not so? You never know. Oh, me, I'm going back to Gulu. Okay. Kwasi and Nuna will be leaving soon, so we can also say our goodbyes tonight, but Baah is still around. We'll have more time with him. So if you want to link up, he's the link up guy. Link up between Germany and Kumasi. He's the major man. So in case you want to meet him before he returns, he's very available for some 1 week or 2. But for Kwasi and Nuna, you can say your goodbyes, exchange contacts, and then, yeah, it can start from tonight. The conversations can continue.